Hello everyone, and welcome to another video of Confronting Chaos, primer videos to chaos fights where I go over the enemies, notable units on the event's banner, and why I chose the units that I did. In this video, I'll be going over the Basch Lost Chapter Chaos fight, so let's get into it. This fight is two waves, with the first wave against two Ironworms and the second wave against one Might Eater and its two little spawns. As a worm type, the Ironworms will use Group Gravity Spin, a Brave gain HP attack that cuts party HP by a fraction rather than with any Brave hits. This move is mostly annoying because, 1, since there are no Brave hits you can't really shave against it, and 2, it'll just throw it out pretty often, and does necessitate some form of healing or HP damage control. Besides that however, the rest of their Brave attacks aren't too strong. Their most annoying ones are probably Shake Off and Reaper, which are group Brave attacks. They'll also buff themselves with Brave regen and magic damage resist, as well as raising their defense as their HP drops. The main boss for this fight is the Might Eater, which also brings along two mini Might Eaters. It is weak to fire, ice, wind, and shadow, and will absorb thunder and earth. Hey, would you look at that, it's weak to most of Vaughn's elements, thank goodness. The unique gimmick for the Might Eater is that for its first turn, it'll cast Flash of Weakness, an aura move that lowers party maximum HP by 45%. Thankfully, with many more summon boards and level 70 stats, this is not nearly as problematic as it was back when Basch first released, but it's still something to consider if you're not using boosted units. However, it can be delayed by summoning at the end of wave 1, letting you get in turns before the enemies. Besides that, the Might Eater's signature move is Absorb Energy, a group attack that doesn't do Brave hits, but instead takes all of the party's bravery at that moment, adds on a bit more, and then does the HP attack. The tell for this move is when the Might Eater says Seeking Energy. Its next move will be Absorb Energy, and it seems to happen at the same time it hits its stat boost HP thresholds. The Might Eater has a few other group attacks as well, one of which is just a Brave gain HP attack, and the other is an HP attack with Brave hits, so it is something to take note of. Besides that, it can also resummon or heal the mini Might Eaters, as well as inflict sap onto a target. As for the mini Might Eaters, they're very simple. They're either going to attack a single target or throw out a group HP attack. They're just a little tanky, but thankfully you don't need to focus on them to finish the fight. With the enemies covered, I'll quickly go over the noteworthy units you can pull for this event. Basch gets a slight rework with his Lost Chapter, giving him better buff durations and a bit of party utility. Both his buffs and his lock debuff from his skill 1 are given extra uptime, improving his tanking. His skill 2 meanwhile batteries the party based on HP damage dealt, as well as improving his enhanced basic attacks. Both attacks gain another hit, with his Brave Plus now battering the party. His LD grants him Indomitable Palisade, 8 group hits that deal split damage. As a whole, it basically makes it easier for him to keep up his defensive buffs as well as his lock debuff, acting as a second Fulminating Darkness in a way. It also gives him a new buff in Indomitable, which raises his attack, his overflow, and heals him immediately to 50% HP if any attack drops him below it, making 50% HP his new minimum HP while it's active. And since Basch's Last Stand passive activates at 50%, he more or less won't die aside from any attacks that happen to bypass it. For those counting, this means Basch now has 5 frame buffs all by himself, so it'd be best to pair him up with aura supports. The LD passive also lets him start off with his Knight's Aptitude buff, so he no longer has to cast Ruin Impendant at the start of the fight for it. Furthermore, it also grants him further enhanced basic attacks, with both attacks getting more hits and battering the party either based on his attack or his HP damage dealt. Lastly, the LD passive also has a party aura for attack and max bravery. As for the team I chose, here's the breakdown. So simplest put, Basch is the absolute MVP for this fight. There's a lot of group HP damage here, and Basch's whole deal is handling that. Locking enemies means any single target damage is directed towards him, and the HP damage reduction he has further increases that survivability. This is further accentuated by his LD buff, as it keeps him from going below 50% HP, which is his Last Stand threshold as well as the threshold for his enhanced EX cast. Vaughn and Noctis are here to put out a lot of damage, helped out a lot by having LDs for both of them. The only worrying time is when the big Might Eater resummons the little Might Eaters and they don't have lock on, but good skill management gives you more than enough to handle relocking. With that, this chaos fight should be covered. If you want to see my footage of this fight, I'll link it in the corner and in the description below. If you liked what you saw and want to see future fights, subscribe so they show up as they're made. If you have any suggestions or thoughts, drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.